Now, one thing I love about this whole situation we're in is that, now look, I have some friends who would identify themselves as being on the left, and they're very dear people to me. But at the same time, having said that, let me now condemn the rest of them by pointing out that if only they lived by their own slogans. The most famous left-wing slogan I can recall is "Question authority." Now, if only they lived by that, if only they lived by that dictum, question authority. Question authority seems to mean, you know, question your parish priest or something, and then you just leave it at that. But by question authority, they mean, yeah, question authority, but, you know, we can't extend that to the, you know, the Fed or the Treasury Secretary or the SEC or the medical establishment or the bipartisan foreign policy consensus or the Washington Post or the official version of American history we were all taught in 4th grade. No, not that. Well, you know what? That's really not that helpful to us right now. We actually need people who are going to ask serious rather than boneheaded and trivial questions. We need people who are going to say, maybe we should ask if we need a Fed, instead of saying, we need a nicer Fed, we just need to reform the Fed, or maybe the Fed is just fine as it is. We need people to say, maybe this institution is not necessary. We need to question existing institutions, and the left isn't doing it, we're the ones doing it. Just consider the very fact that today you can, all around the country, join a local End the Fed chapter. I mean, did any of us think that was going to happen in our lifetimes? Yeah, I better see what my local End the Fed chapter is up to. I mean, well, this is unbelievable. Amazing that this is occurring. And again, it's been made possible by Ron Paul. Let me say, for the record, which I've said repeatedly, because when I'm wrong, I want to admit I'm wrong. I was so wrong on this. When, in the presidential campaign, Ron Paul started talking about monetary policy in the Fed, I thought he was making a big mistake. I said, people aren't going to understand this. It's going to go way over their heads. Let's focus on things that the public can get. Boy, thank goodness no one ever listens to me, you know? Thank goodness. Because this was one of the best services he could perform for us. Because the typical politician, you know, has his focus groups and he finds out, hey, you know, what are the rubes out there interested in? I'll give them the red meat they're looking for. Ron Paul instead thinks, well, here's what we should be thinking about, and I'm going to talk to you about it. This is a completely new breed of person, really, in the political world. And he was so right, and I was so wrong. And so, you know, it's humbling. But I'm glad to admit this, because man, has he done us a service. Because now it's possible to entertain questions like, again, I focus on the Fed because of the Audit the Fed bill, and this is on our minds, but should we have this institution at all? Now, last month, Gene Epstein and I were in a debate in Las Vegas that C-SPAN covered. We were debating, should we abolish the Fed? I mean, nobody was debating this 3 years ago. Certainly not 10 or years or more. And yet suddenly this is almost like, it's almost like cool to be anti-Fed now, right? I mean, if somebody is pro-Fed, you think, what kind of a stooge are you, right? My favorite little bit, though, if I may share this with you. Ron Paul's on a TV thing, I think it's CNBC. Now don't take my punchline, please, if you know it, all right? He's on a CNBC thing, and he's with some almost scared-looking kid, you know, who's a misnamed progressive, even though he favors the totally regressive Fed. I don't know why they call him a progressive, but they do. So they got the host, whose job is just to keep the conversation going without really knowing what anyone's talking about. And then you got Ron Paul and then this other person. So like a Brady Bunch kind of thing on the screen. So Ron Paul is saying, you know, well, you know, Congressman Paul, I mean, surely you're not saying we need to get rid of the Fed altogether, right? Oh, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think we need to abolish it. It needs to just to go, you know, the sort of thing no one's ever heard on television before. And the look of sheer terror on the kid's face, like, what? What? And so instead of saying, well, you know, instead of thinking, you know what? Instead of just taking the Fed for granted, I should live up to what I'm supposed to believe in and question these things, he instead said, well, but if you got rid of the Fed, I mean, it would be like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, you know, sure, we don't like Greenspan or whatever, but we can't just throw. And so I thought to myself, gosh, that is such a great, interesting confrontation that we just watched on TV. And so sure enough, I was on this radio show in Ohio, and it's one of my favorite moments in all the times I've done a radio show. The guy said the same thing to me. The radio host said, you know, you make a lot of good arguments against the Fed, but I have this fear that you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, if you get rid of the Fed, isn't that what you're doing? And I said, well, you want to throw out the baby with the bathwater if it's a demon baby, right? Now, today I've been talking about propaganda and history. I don't need to talk to you about propaganda and the economy because we're surrounded by it, so we can skip that section. But I will say that I'm grateful to Congressman Paul. He wrote the foreword for my book, Meltdown, that came out this year, talking about giving a free market overview of what happened to us, explaining it so that the other side can't just get away with the old thing of, well, the free market failed, you're all a bunch of stupid rubes for believing in it, and now your overlords need more power. I wanted to give an alternative to that, and the very fact that there's an interest in this, that my point of view, which would be considered radical, is getting a fair hearing, it's because Ron Paul blazed the trail. I mean, there's no way I can deny that, and I wouldn't want to deny that. I'm thrilled that he's made this all possible. That now, finally, we have a hearing, we have young people listening. Young people don't want to be stooges. That's the last thing they want to be. They want to be on the cutting edge. Now, wait a minute. Now, you're thinking, wait a minute, what about all those Obama drones who just go out there and, yeah, whatever Obama says, I'll support. All right, I take that back. There are some young people who want to be drones. However, the thinking young people, the ones who actually can change history, are people who are insulted by what they see around them, by young people who think, I just do whatever the wise leader tells me to do, I pledge allegiance to our wise leader. No, 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 they want to ask questions. They respect a man who's turning 74, who looks them in the eye and tells them the truth. They know it's the truth. This is what they respect. They don't respect the drones, and we are reaching these young people. For the first time, we are actually getting to them, and we're not going to know what the results are of what Ron Paul has done for 5, 10 years maybe, because the fruits of it are still so young, we don't know what they're going to do with their lives yet. They haven't even graduated, half of them. But wait till they do. Economics departments will never be the same, but so many other aspects of our society will never be the same, because the bright kids, the drones don't make history. The kids who actually have a vision, who believe in something, they make history. And Ron Paul is the leader who has made it possible for us even to consider that the future could be different from the present. Instead of just thinking fatalistically that, you know, I guess we're just going to keep going through our lives and everything we believe in is just going to keep being trampled and no one's going to champion it and then we're just going to die and that's it. For the first time, I feel like maybe that's not our future. And it's because of him.